Good evening and welcome to the Pittsford School Board's meeting. And tonight we are calling the meeting to order, and we will begin with a moment of silence. Oh, please come in. So please join us for a moment of silence as 3 of our Sutherland High School staff members' children passed away last week. Keep Paul and Jess Laban in your thoughts and prayers as their baby daughter, Margaret Natalie, passed away at birth. Keep Janet Brabuto and her family in your thoughts and prayers as her son, Ryan, a Minden High School graduate, became a victim of homicide while leaving his volunteer post working with at-risk youth in underserved communities in D.C. There is nothing more tragic than losing a child. These families will remain in our hearts, thoughts, and prayers. Thank you. Would you please join us in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda? Jeff?
Second.
And Renee? Are there any questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Next, we will have our principal's report. Ms. Sarah Jacob from Barker Road Middle School.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me tonight. And just first, thank you to the board and the superintendent for your visit last Thursday. It was great to have everyone there to see staff as well as tour our building. So for tonight, I'm going to focus in on 4 different areas, 4 different areas of focus that we have been striving for this school year, and will continue to be working on, some of which will be past the school year and spanning into years to come. Starting with our instructional support team. So we had the opportunity this year to take a look at this really important process that we have in the building. We were able to revamp or restructure this. So what that has looked like this year is getting more voices to the table in how to support our students as best we can. We have 4 individuals that are co-chairing this process. Richard Victor, our assistant principal, Emily Lubinski and Chris Lapis, who are our literacy specialists in the building, as well as Jill Pazzo, who's a math teacher. Really the goal of this was to firm up our process and make sure that we were able to have the means to also extract data after the fact so that we could see what trends we were seeing and things that we were seeing as needs for support of students. So we've moved to an electronic referral process. If a team of teachers or a group of teachers or one teacher, counselor, even through parent involvement, through like a team meeting, we can submit an electronic referral, and then the student goes to review of a small group setting where our 4 co-chairs sit down weekly and review students. From there, if we identify specific supports that are needed, this could be anything from something being added to their schedule, like our structured study hall, for instance. We then move to a larger group setting that involves more stakeholders, more teachers in the process to, again, evaluate the data, what's been done so far in the classroom to support the student and see what would be the best support moving forward. The other piece of this, too, is the progress monitoring piece. So we really wanted to make sure that we were creating a fluid process so that once supports were in place, that we were checking to make sure that those supports were still appropriate and relevant. And then, hopefully, once the student is getting that support they need and things are improving, then we would potentially remove supports or add different supports. But the idea is that, students, as they gain support and whatever they need, they are moving in and out of this process. It also then initiates further process with our PST and potentially our CSE process as well. So this was a great opportunity to, like I said, really involve more staff members in the process to best support students. With our strategic initiative, we have really been focusing, as many buildings have, on starting out with the hub. We have been encouraging a lot of learning around this. Not only did we introduce the hub at our superintendent's conference day, but since that, we have built in a lot of time for staff to be looking into those 30 high leverage moves, along with getting to know in a deeper sense our frameworks that are attached to this. So for instance, our next generation, our Pittsford next generation skills, our CRSE framework, as well as our social emotional learning benchmarks. We've also grappled with things as a staff that's been really important, like the idea of rigor, which was a fun activity that we had at a faculty meeting that really got our brain sweat going and really engaged staff in what that looks like, not only at the middle level, but what it could potentially look like beyond in the high school, and then also before in the elementary space. Another thing, along with our strategic initiative, is really focusing a lot on that welcoming, affirming environment. So you'll see in the bottom picture there, we have staff. This was just actually done recently at our last faculty meeting, where we once again did the DOT project. So we put it on paper, and big paper, and put it in our main gym and had staff go through, and they answered 2 different prompts that we were really focused on that we developed through our mental health team. One was, I, the teacher, or the staff member, would know if a student was having a bad day. And the other prompt was, I know that this student has a peer connection. Not only do we want to make sure that we are creating connections between students and staff, but also we want to make sure that we are creating those peer-to-peer relationships. So staff literally went around and made dots in both those columns and both those prompts for students that they could answer those questions for. In conjunction with that, we also have been doing our Trusted Adult activity, which has been really great. This was delivered through our teams, through our grade level teams, which looked like a mini lesson that really focused on social emotional learning. And then students were asked to identify 2 to 3 adults that they have a connection with. The great part about this is not only do they identify the adults if they have an adult, but they also write a little card to the adult that shares that you are a trusted adult. Those cards are all delivered to our staff members, so they can actually know who they have that connection with, or what student has identified having that connection with them, and then hopefully leverage that and tap into that. The other thing about this is we will use both of these to cross-reference, and starting with our mental health team, we will be focusing on those students that A, might not have had a connection through our DOT activity, identified as having a connection, or B, the that they did not self-identify as having that trusted adult in the building. So that's really what we've just completed, these two things, and we're working on then putting them together, and like I said, cross-referencing them, identifying students that we need to look into further and try to create some of those connections, and working with staff members from there. And then this spring, moving forward, we're going to be working with the CRSE framework to tap into the culturally responsive instruction. I've thought just recently that maybe I need to add architect under my email signature. I haven't yet, but I'm getting close. I want the little poster tube and everything, but it's been a lot of fun with the capital project progress this fall. The one really great thing about it, and the one thing I want to highlight is, I mean, you're all familiar with what is being done here at Barker Road, but I think the really cool piece about this is the fact that we are including a number of stakeholders into the conversation. So in each area that we're looking at Barker Road, we identified staff members that could come in and give their input and work in collaboration with myself and with the architects, and really give feedback on what was happening. So they met starting in August. These individuals that are teachers within the building, that are experts in their area and their teaching spaces, came in and they met on a monthly basis. And those meetings just wrapped up in December with a final sign-off. So it's really exciting, and I just love that we had that collaborative piece. We also were able to bring certain pieces back to our instructional leadership team for further input, as well as our team leaders. So very exciting there, lots to happen at Barker Road, but it's just a really great start, and I just love that we led with that collaborative mindset. And then lastly, and what I would argue is most importantly, we are continuing our conversation about what it means to be Barker to the core. Everything that we do, from announcements on the morning bark, to instruction in the classroom, to reminders in the cafeteria, all circles around our 7 core principles. And that has really been a cornerstone for everything we do. We coined the phrase last year, be Barker to the core, and that is something I know parents probably hear their students come home and say. My 2 daughters who don't attend Pittsford even come home and say, be Barker to the core. So it's really great. It really infuses every decision that is made. Even ones that, kids are not necessarily involved with, teachers are constantly thinking about that as they're making decisions within their classroom. And on a larger scale, we just had our mid-year assemblies where we talked a lot about the idea of being Barker to the core, and specifically around how your words matter and that they hold power. And we had some very frank discussions around that with students just a couple weeks ago. And that was then shared with families and hopefully supported and reinforced at home. So we talk a lot about being Barker to the core, and I think that it really goes back to that piece of that welcoming and affirming environment. We don't want anything to threaten that. We want every kid to walk in and make sure that they feel they can be themselves, and that they're cared for, and that they can be their best on a daily basis. It's an expectation that is held for everyone. So with that, those are our 4 areas of focus, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Any questions? Who designed the graphics, Sarah?
The Barker to the core graphic? Mm-hmm. So that was actually Karen Grace, one of our social studies teachers, created the graphic, and we all have T-shirts. It's very exciting, and it was a whole reboot with our core principles reboot, and kind of bringing them back to life, especially after COVID. So
Very
rebranding,
nice.
if you will. Yeah.
Very nice, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? We appreciate your report.
Thank you for having me. I
Thank you.
appreciate
Thank you all
it.
for coming.
Thank you. Next, we would like to entertain a motion for the approval of the January 9, 2024 minutes. That would be Emily, and seconded by Kim. All in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. Thank you. And we are all aware of our responsibilities with the Monroe County School Boards Association. And at this, the board leadership meeting, the executive committee meetings, all these are coming up. Our legislative committee, we may hear something from Sarah about that. Okay, thank you. And Emily, anything up from information exchange? The three of us attended.
So I didn't get to information exchanges, and I did go to labor relations.
Okay, all right, okay. All right, well, thank you. Thank you. So other dates to remember, this is really key. February 3rd, 2024, our MIXPA legislative breakfast will be at 8:30. And by a show of hands, who can attend that? Okay, thank you. There's I think a deadline coming up on that. So, yes, thank you. And February 6th is our next regularly scheduled meeting. And so next we will have our financial reports. We will be taking action on the items, and you have reviewed those in your board packets. So the first thing we will take action on is the acceptance of our treasurer's report from December 31, 2023.
So you'll hear Mike Vespi normally would give this report. I'm going to give it this evening. Mike is in Albany. We both were in Albany this week advocating for state budget, and he wraps up his work today. So it's my pleasure to present for your consideration acceptance of the treasurer's report. The district is still on track to exceed interest earnings with another $64,000 in December, with maturing CDs and continued investments in NICLAS. Revenues for food service are lower when compared to our previous year. Lower employee costs help offset those lower revenues. However, lower costs because we have less people, not because the hourly rate went down. That helped offset the net operations, but we are currently negative at the time. The impact of higher food costs and the level of participation needs to be reviewed and discussed. A budget monitoring plan will also be implemented for the remainder of the year, and more to come with that. Thank you.
Thank you. So is there a motion to accept the treasurer's report? Thank you, Sarah. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Hearing none. All opposed? The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Next for your consideration is the extra classroom report. After review, there are very typical receipt and disbursement activities in ski, musical, drama clubs are big ticket items, and various student councils throughout the grade levels. Again, it's wonderful to see the number of clubs that are available to all of our students. I think as a side, I had my superintendent's advisory group today, and this is also echoed in a couple other forums. Our students in our community is very fortunate to have the amount of activities that we offer after school. But specific to this report, everything seems to be going well as far as all of the monitoring and auditing of our clubs.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a motion to accept our quarterly extra classroom activities report? That's from Dave and Kim. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. And last for your consideration is the approval of the non-resident tuition rates that would be used if or when applicable.
Thank you. Is there a motion to accept our non-resident tuition rates?
So moved.
Emily and Dave. Thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we will have.
Well, so just as an FYI, the professional service contract report is on the list for your information only.
Thank you. And next we will have our Human Resources Report from Mr. Clark.
Thank you and good evening. First for your consideration is the professional staff report. We have 2 certificated staff appointments, 1 auxiliary appointment, 1 school-related professional appointment. We have 13 certificated staff resignations for retirement totaling 301.9 years of service, 1 managerial confidential resignation, and 1 school-related professional resignation.
Thank you. Is there a motion to accept our professional staff report? Sarah? And Kim. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you. For your consideration is the support staff report. We have 2 clerical appointments, 1 custodial resignation, and 1 food service appointment.
Thank you. So is there a motion to accept the support staff report? That will be Renee, and there's a second from Emily. Thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is our special education report. Ms. Woods.
Good evening. CSE and CPSE recommendations are on the consent agenda this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Woods. And from there, we are having our superintendent's report. Mr. Pirro.
Thank you. There is not a need for an executive session this evening. We are excited to see our robotics team off to Pittsburgh, PA. So for your consideration, there is a field trip approval for a robotics team to travel to Pittsburgh.
Thank you. So, is there a motion to accept the field trip approval to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Sutherland High School robotics team? That's Kim, and seconded by Renee. Any questions about that? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it.
And for your consideration is the approval of the 24-25 budget guidelines. It's hard to believe we're in that season already. Our district planning team has worked hard on the first draft of the budget guidelines. One of the things that we really had to process was the uncertainty of where we are going to land next year with our state aid, which I'll have an update on in a second. But then also the concept of where our budget is going to be the following year. What you'll see in the budget guidelines is a difference from last year to this year is the removal of a couple areas that have gone from needing to be in the budget to being operational. So you'll see the safety costs under the student-based budget were removed, and primarily that was encumbered when the community voted to approve our capital project. So much of those costs are already approved and accounted for. And the other part that we removed from the budget guidelines was to support our technology initiative relative to staffing. That was removed because that spot was also encumbered for next year's budget through this year's funds. And then last, we removed an area of professional learning communities under professional development, simply because there's no costs in the budget specific to this area. So for your consideration is the new and improved 24-25 budget guidelines.
Thank you. Is there a motion to accept and approve of the 2024-25 budget guidelines? Sarah, motion from Sarah with the second from Dave. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? All opposed? The motion carries. Thank you.
So recently, we received our state aid runs from the governor's office, and as we budget this year for next year, we have to guess, and so we conservatively guess that we would probably receive an increase of around $300,000 or $400,000 in our foundation aid. And we use that estimate based on the governor's pledge to fully fund foundation aid for our district and all districts. And for our district, it hasn't been fully funded since 2007. When the aid runs came in, instead of receiving $300,000 to $400,000 that we expected as minimum, what we noticed was that we're receiving an additional $1,000 in our foundation aid. So that's about 0.0 something percent increase. The concerning part is when we receive the report, the first thing that it shows is that Pittsford will receive 3.5% increase in aid, which is a huge shell game because the majority of that are for programs that we don't offer, so we're not eligible for. And so they earmark that money, so it counts as our total amount, and then when we can't spend it, they take it back out. So after seeing that, I was really concerned about a huge step backwards in aid. So I requested to meet with Assemblymember Benedetto, and he is the chair for the Educational Committee. So he would be the most, hopefully the most influential person in this process. So our Assistant Superintendent for Business, Mike Vespi, was already in Albany. So we drove up, we met with Assemblymember Benedetto and met with his staffers. We were able to show them both everything I just articulated here, but on paper, that we are receiving $1,000 in foundation aid and receiving $1 million something in programs we don't offer, and how the governor is going to say that she gave us a 3.5% increase. So after a good while in conversation, what they did pledge was to, one, they said don't panic because it's very early in the budget process. I asked for other people I should be advocating with, and the answer was for now it was him primarily, and that he would follow up with me in the very near future. So should I not hear back, then I will follow up with his office next week. The other thing that I would just want to remind the board is that $1,000 on foundation aid increase, coupled with essentially a 0% tax cap from this year's budget, is pretty detrimental to our overall budget. So when you think about where schools receive their revenue, it's from the community basically and from the state. And our community was close to 0% increase last year, and from the state it's $1,000. As we entered this budget process for next year, we assumed that we would be pretty close to balanced, maybe $100,000, $200,000 off. And now we have to add on, as a current deficit, the $300,000 or $400,000 that we're not getting from the state. So it's going to be a little bit tougher to close the gap for next year. We also have the compounding problem of a combination which we'll share with the board first in a retreat session and then with the public. But the impact of 0% in a tax cap, low state aid, and then costs rising. So we have more money coming out than more money coming in. So our biggest concern is the following year, 25-26, we are looking at probably about a $5 million deficit. So it's real numbers, and we're looking at tough times. Our hope and our belief in our long-term planning is when we get beyond 25-26, we start flattening out again, which is good. So we need to remove that deficit and then get back on the right track, unless we receive additional funds that do not look like they're there at this point. Then the last thing I have is just to share a meeting I have set up tomorrow, and that is with Monroe County Sheriff's Office and the town of Pittsford and a couple other local school districts, actually to talk about the solar eclipse on April 8th. So if you recall, that is a day all the schools in the county have taken off. There's a lot of concerns about traffic and congestion in our area, bringing in several 100,000 spectators, it's believed. So we're going to be probably agreeing to shut down the entire facility for the day, and is my sense. So that would mean all extracurriculars on that day would be shut down. We're going to have to process areas like what do we do with people that are having viewing parties or want to use your parking lots or your lawns to watch the solar eclipse. So that meeting is tomorrow, and I will certainly follow up with the board shortly after that. And with that, and actually I just would be remiss if I didn't say, I had a great weekend. Saw our hockey teams play in Pink the Rink. Loved the fact that our community comes together, raises a ton of money for great causes. So this was for breast cancer. As the Rainbow Classic before that was for Golisano's Children's Hospital. And just prior to that, I was able to see our Sutherland High School's Little Mermaid play, and they were outstanding. There's greatness all around us with our students. They're so active and engaged, and they're using all of their talents for good, and it's wonderful to see. Anyone here in Little Mermaid? Awesome job. Yeah, it was great. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Pirro. So next is our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Renee and Dave. Thank you. Are any questions, comments? All in favor? Any opposed? So that motion carries also. Is there any old business?
Can I just piggyback on what Mr. Pirro was saying about the solar eclipse? So a few of us did attend the Information Exchange Committee presentation on the solar eclipse a couple of weeks ago. And for anyone who isn't aware, the next time Rochester will be in the path of a total solar eclipse is going to be the year 2144. 2144. So make sure you can get outside and get your whole family outside on the 8th, because this is truly a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And RochesterEclipse2024.org is going to have a lot of information about how to view safely, where to view, and things like that. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Is there any additional old business? Okay. Hearing none, is there any new business? Okay. And tonight, there is no public comment. And so is there a motion for, oh, did you want to say something?
No, I would just say no one submitted public comment.
Okay.
We're not canceling public comment. No one submitted
That's
any.
right. That's right. Okay, so from there, is there a motion for adjournment? So Sarah and Kim, thank you so much. And all in favor? That motion carries. Thank you.